and welcome to this lesson where we're going to go through how you play the C major scale in 7 positions all over the fretboard, just like how I showed you in that little quick introduction. So this is a system that I learned when I was at uni, and the idea is that you have certain anchor points on the fretboard that vary depending on what key you're in, and you just build notes around those anchor points, and that gives you different scale positions. It's a good little system. It works really well if you're taking a solo and you end up lost in the fretboard somewhere, and you can just take a minute and think, okay, well, where is my anchor point? Well, here it's here. And now that means I know all the notes I can play in that area around that sort of anchor point. So the way it works is we need to find our root note on the low E, A, and D strings, the bottom 3. Our root note is just the note that the scale is built up from. So in the case of C major, our root note would be C. If we were playing in a different key, like D major or whatever, then we would end up having to find different root notes. If you don't know the notes on the fretboard on the low E, A, and D strings, I have a separate video on my YouTube channel for that, which I'm going to link on screen. You can have a wee look at that and then come back over here. But for quickness, just now, I'm just going to tell you where the note C is on those strings. So you'll find it on the A string at fret 3, on the low E string at fret 8, and on the D string at fret 10. Now what we do is we can put different fingers on any one of those root notes, and then depending on what finger we've put on that root note, that'll determine what position or what fingering of the scale we end up playing. So for instance, if we take a root note on the A string at fret 3, if I put my second finger on it, I would play a specific group of notes surrounding that. But if I was to put my first finger on that root note, well, I'm going to play a different fingering for a different position. So it's different fingerings, playing different frets, but still the exact same scale, the exact same set of notes. And you would do that for all 4 fingers you've got in your hand. You've got 3 root notes, you can do it for all of them. That'll give us a total of 7 different positions we can play. So let's now take a little bit of a look in more detail at what those 7 positions are and how we can finger them. So as well as me showing you them, I'm also going to put a fretboard diagram on screen. On those diagrams, the note we're starting from, our root note, is going to be highlighted with a red dot, and then all the other notes that surround that are going to be highlighted by black dots. So let's take a wee look at the first one now. Okay, so on screen you'll see a neck diagram showing all the notes that we need for this first position. Now remember what I was saying, the root note, which is the note C, which is the note we're starting on, is highlighted by the red circle, and everything else is highlighted by the black circles. So for this position, our root note is found on the 3rd fret of the A string. Now we're going to put our second finger on that note, okay? And we're going to associate this position with having our second finger on the root note on the A string. So what I want you to do is go all the way up this pattern from that root note to the highest note. Now for that stretch on the high E string, I'm using my 1st, 2nd and 4th fingers to play the 1st, 3rd and 5th frets. Okay? Now at that point, once we reach the highest note, we're going to descend the scale, going all the way down to the lowest note. So that'll be the 1st fret on the low E string. Then we're going to start ascending again, and now we're going to go back up to the root note, the note we started on. So the whole pattern. Now for this second position, we're taking that same root note, the 3rd fret on the A string, but this time we're going to put our 1st finger on that root note. And I want you to do the same thing, go from our root note, our note C, all the way up to the highest note in this position. Now for the big stretches, I'm still using my 1st, 2nd and 4th fingers. You could, if you want, use your 1st, 3rd and 4th fingers, but you'll probably have a slightly easier time if you use your 1st, 2nd and 4th fingers. So, all the way up to the highest note. Reach your 1st finger forward a fret to the 4th fret there. And once we reach this point, we're going to descend the pattern all the way down to the lowest note on the low E string. And then we're going to start ascending until we go back to our root. So all together we have For the 3rd position, we're going to take our root note from the 8th fret of the low E string, and we're going to put our pinky on that root note. So this is the position that we associate with having our pinky on a root note in the low E string. And same as always, when you go from your root note all the way up to the highest note. Now that stretch on the D string I'm doing with my 1st, 3rd and 4th fingers. Just because our 3rd finger is on the 7th fret for some of the other notes anyway, so it makes sense to just reach our pinky out rather than swapping to our 2nd finger. So, where were we? And then we're going to descend all the way to the lowest note on the low E string. And then back up to our root. For this next position, we're going to take that same root note, the 8th fret on the low E string, but this time we're going to put our 2nd finger on that root, okay? So for this position, same as always, we're going to play it all the way up to the highest note. And then we're going to go all the way back down to the lowest note. And then back up to our root. Next, we're going to stick with that same root note again. We're still on the 8th fret of the low E string, but this time we're going to put our 1st finger on that root. Now, since our 1st finger is starting on the low E string on the root note, this actually is the lowest note that we're going to play in this pattern. So all I need to do is just ascend all the way up to the highest note and then back down again. And again, I'm back to doing the big stretches with my 1st, 2nd and 4th fingers. So that's at the 8th, 10th and 12th frets. And I'm bringing my 1st finger in a fret. And then stretching it back out again. For the next position, we're going to find our root note on the D string at the 10th fret. And for this position, we're going to put our first finger on that root note. And same as always, we're going to play up from the root note to the highest note. And again, I'm stretching with my third and fourth fingers there, rather than using my second and fourth fingers. Reason for that just being we're about to be using our third finger on the 12th fret on some other strings, so it just makes sense to keep it there. Then we're going to descend all the way to the lowest note on the low E string. And then back up to our root. And for this last position, our root note is found at the 15th fret on the A string, and we're going to put our pinky, or our fourth finger, on that root note. And same as always, play up to the highest note. Back down to the lowest note. And then back up to our root note. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like. Also subscribe to my channel because I'm going to have new lessons coming out every week. And until the next one, happy practicing.